So after a roller coaster ride of emotions all weekend in South Carolina, we have made it back home in one piece. However, we still have quite a bit of work to do to repair everything that needs repaired after being in South Carolina for the weekend. If you've already watched the video on Street Racing Channel, you know that we broke the converter first round 11 hours from home. But the good news is we've already got a new converter here at the shop from 501 Performance that's ready to go in, and it's almost identical to the one that's in the Nova. The drain plug in the transmission didn't look too good either, but that's not the only thing that needs fixed after our weekend of racing. Somehow the golf cart managed to end up with a flat tire on the right rear, which left us stranded with only one pit vehicle, and somehow the generator ended up with contaminated fuel. I believe someone put methanol in a gas can. Evidently, someone didn't get the memo that methanol only goes in the white jugs, gasoline goes in the red ones. So anyway, we've got plenty of work to do this week to get all this stuff fixed and ready to go again the next time we decide to go racing. Now, if you're watching this and you're thinking, man, they must have had a really bad weekend, well, we kind of did. But let me explain something. It got off to a really rough start before we ever left the driveway. So let's rewind back to Friday, the day we were supposed to leave for our 11-hour trip one way to Myrtle Beach Dragway in South Carolina. Kenny had pulled the Suburban into the shop to rotate the tires, only to find a major coolant leak in the water pump. So he goes ahead and orders a new water pump from Mark and busts out the black spray paint. We don't call him Krylon Kenny for nothing. Anyway, after he got all the parts all gathered up, Uncle Bucko came in to help out.
The last thing I said to Numbnut last night was,
What's that?
anything up by morning?
And here we are.
Let's just say Uncle Bucko wasn't too happy to have to respond to a 911 call this early Friday morning. And you know what happens when you're rushed for time. You tend to make mistakes and make messes.
I'm gonna do this the Uncle Bucko way.
Lack of maintenance.
When Kenny says the Uncle Bucko way, what he really means is the messy way, because Kenny's always the one that has to clean up after Jeremy. Anyway, while Jeremy's working on the Suburban, Vicky and Tommy continue to load up merch, while Kenny and Jeremy move from one project to another. Because once the Suburban was done, then Billy's Dodge Dually needed some attention as well. The belt tensioner was squealing and making all kinds of noise, so we needed to get that taken care of before we left. And we needed to get the Mustang's tires aired up and put it away, and make sure we got all the coolant cleaned up off the floor before the dogs ended up out in the shop.
The last thing I said last night was not to break anything by morning, right?
Right.
So you wait till morning.
So after I got done listening to Jeremy bitch and complain, we backed the dually up, filled up the water tank on the race car trailer, and we made our way out, down across the Ohio River into West Virginia. Now, for some reason, every time we make a trip down to the Carolinas, it seems like it takes forever to get out of West Virginia, especially at night, because at night you can't see anything, but at least during the day, it's a really scenic drive. It usually takes us about an hour and a half, 2 hours, maybe a little bit more, depending on how many times we get stopped for fuel and how long it takes to get through the toll booths. Now, since we're pulling a 50-foot race car trailer, we only stop at the big rest areas like the Tamarack, which is right along the West Virginia Turnpike on our way down. Billy filled up the Cummins and Vicky went inside to get us all something to eat to try and tide us over for the rest of the trip. Because unfortunately, since we got such a late start, we're not going to make it to the track until probably 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. It was just about sunset when we entered the tunnel to go from West Virginia into the state of Virginia, which was kind of frustrating for me because Virginia is one of the most beautiful states that we pass through. Anyhow, we made a couple more fuel stops on the way down, and we finally made it to the track at about 3:30 in the morning. We went ahead and unloaded the race cars, and then decided to go out and get our first look at the track surface that we'd be racing on Saturday. We slept in a little bit Saturday, and by the time I got up in the afternoon, the place was filling up fast. It was fairly warm outside, but the weather forecast looked really good. Of course, this close to the coast, there's always a chance for a pop-up shower. But overall, things were looking really good. The pits were full of race car trailers and race cars, and they had already begun pulling the streetcar class out onto the track to tech the cars and to sit them out for their mandatory cruise. It's always nice to go through the pits and see a lot of cars that you're not familiar with, that you haven't gotten to race with before. So we were pretty excited about that. But we weren't, however, really excited about the track surface. You see, last night when we got here, I noticed the left-hand lane was really good, but the right-hand lane was anything but. I had messaged the promoter last night. He said they were going to scrape the left-hand lane today, but they only made it about 20 feet. So this is going to be interesting. We felt pretty strongly that this was going to be a one-lane racetrack, at least for first round. But luckily, both the boys drew left lane first round.
Very, very good, buddy. Very, very good.
Yeah, you want to get ready first or second? Nitrous, so it don't really matter.
Don't matter. Second.
Second. All right. You want to be on the line, huh?
Yeah.
Tommy had drawn this really nice looking red nitrous first-gen Camaro first round. And unfortunately, the Camaro had a major problem trying to get down the right lane. Next up was Billy. Thankfully, he was in the left lane too. But we had a major problem creeping up on us with the S10, and we had no idea until it was beyond too late to fix it.
Nothing leaking. No leaking.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the shop. It's Tuesday night. I'm still working on this video out here in the shop. So unfortunately, the S10 was out first round with this torque converter failure. We're going to try and send these two Hughes converters back and get them fixed. But for right now, I know Billy's got this brand new 501 performance converter, just like the one that's in the Nova. And we're going to go ahead and put that in the truck, and we're going to get to testing that in the meantime. Anyway, now Tommy is going into second round. And Tommy drew this little Honda. It's an all-wheel drive Honda. We had seen the Honda make a lick first round, and it wasn't necessarily the best, but it wasn't probably the worst. We felt pretty confident that we could beat the Honda without too much trouble. You know, we don't want to be overly confident, but we want to make sure we make good use of every round to get faster. So Billy and Tommy decided to concentrate on from 60 to 330 feet, because at this time the sun was still up. It was still pretty warm. The track temperatures were still pretty high, and we felt like the 60 foot we should probably leave alone, but from 60 foot to 330 feet, we could definitely lean on the car harder and get a better run at the bumps down track. So that's what we did. The Falcon responded to the changes very well. However, the car was still extremely loose at the top end of the track. Now, as you could see there, the Falcon was still very loose at the top end of the track. We're still trying to get our bearings on what we can and cannot do out the back, and it was evident at that point that we could not put a whole lot of power to it out the back. It had to be a dire emergency for us to try and throw scramble at it out the back, or try and do anything miraculous from 330 feet on down. So basically what you've got is what I would consider a one-lane racetrack that was only good in one lane from the starting line to 330 feet. And after that, it was all bad. We never got to run in the right-hand lane all night, so we don't have any data. I can't comment on the right-hand lane, but I can tell you by what I saw, the right-hand lane had to have been at least 2 to 3 tenths up to half a second slower, maybe more, depending on the car and the combination. Now, when we found out third round that we had drawn the left lane again, I was happy about that, of course. But I also was very concerned because we had drawn the Holy Ghost Mustang. It's a White Fox body Mustang nitrous car, And I watched that car make a lick second round in the left-hand lane, and it was probably one of, if not the fastest pass that had been made there the entire event. Of course, nitrous car is always going to 60 foot and 330 really hard. And I had this vision in my head when I heard Holy Ghost in the right-hand lane, and knowing how bad that right-hand lane was and knowing how fast the car 60-footed the round prior, and knowing that the lanes were somewhat even to 60 foot. I mean, it's pretty close in 60 feet, but it was after the 60 foot it got terrible. This had a major concern in my mind, that anytime that you know you're going to get out 60-footed by a car in the worst lane, there's always the opportunity for that car to get loose and come across the track ahead of you or into the side of you, and that's the absolute worst possible thing, of course. I always try to remind the kids that it's always best for a car that you feel like they could get loose. You always want them to cross behind you. You don't want them to cross into you, or you don't want them to cross ahead of you. If there's anything that you can possibly do to make sure if they're going to cross, they cross behind you, definitely do it. So the boys had already intended to put as much into the 60-foot in the Falcon that they possibly could before we found out that we had this Mustang. So I didn't say too much, but I had this vision in my mind that this could be a major problem. This could be a crash. You hope that that doesn't happen. You don't want to see that happen, of course. But I had this vision in my head that this could possibly be the most dangerous round that we run the entire event right here. Now, since Billy is out of competition, he's able to go up on the starting line and help me back the Falcon up in its tracks, which is really nice to have. It's always nice to have a second set of eyes behind the car looking down track as you're backing the car up. So we got the Falcon back in its tracks, perfect, and dead set right down the groove. Sometimes it takes every ounce of focus to not be distracted by what's going on behind you and around you on the starting line. Now, if you watch that pass, if you've got a really keen eye and a decent ear to you, you could probably make out what possibly caused that Mustang to get so loose. If you watch that video really close, you can hear the car's on nitrous when it leaves the starting line, and then it sounds like the second kit comes in and you see this larger flame come out the bullhorn just as the car gets loose. And then right after you see this flame, when the second, it sounds like the second kit come on, when that second kit come on, it was still in low gear. Now, I don't know if that was a situation where they were trying to allow the engine to get a run at the gear change because it's got a tight converter. A lot of the nitrous cars will have really tight converters in them, and sometimes they need to get a run at the gear change so that it doesn't bulge. But unfortunately, I think when that second kit come on, it knocked the tire loose, and then it immediately went into high gear, and the driver had to pedal it and cut gas. Because you can see the second kit comes on, the flame gets really bright and then goes out almost immediately because he could tell it was a major problem. It's just your natural instinct when you feel a car knock a tire off like that. It's your natural instinct to lift, or at least it should be. And luckily that guy was able to gather the car up and not crash the car. But luckily, when he did cross lanes, he crossed behind Tommy and not into the side of him and not in front of him. And if you notice in the video, I kind of held my hands over my head and I was just in shock because what I had just witnessed, I had already seen happen in my mind. I knew that that was a possibility, and it's tough to watch your kids race this way. You notice a lot of times I'll kneel down and say a prayer behind the car, and I'll hold on to the wing until I absolutely have to let go. And it's just my way of, that's the last second I know that they're safe When I let go of that wing, that's the last second I know they're safe. And then I pray that they'll be safe and make their way back to the trailer. And luckily, so far, that's been the case. So anyway, after Tommy made that pass, Billy caught me in the staging lanes and said, hey, Tommy's got a problem. He's stuck at the end of the track. He's got a blown fuse. So I ran back to the trailer real quick to get some supplies. Now, ever since the kids have put the 14-volt alternator and battery on this car, it's gotten this issue where it wants to blow the fuse if Tommy touches a scramble in high gear. And that's what happened here. I went back to the trailer, made a makeshift fuse, brought it up to Tommy, and we got the car fired up and back off the track surface. I apologized to the track crew for holding up the show, and we took the car back to the pits.
Well, Falcon got it done, boy. Woo! Nice driving, buddy. Dude, I grabbed the scramble probably just at the shift, and he got out on me.
He was out on you by like not a car. No, I watched the video from the stands. He was out on you by a foot.
Oh, he was?
Feet.
Okay. Well, it looked like he's just,
I got in the dust in the middle, almost ran into the back of you.
He did?
Yeah, he crossed behind you.
Holy shit. It's a good thing I passed him. I grabbed the scramble and I was just like, it was nuts. No, I mean, it was all over it wasn't spinning, but the bumps are so bad when you know, and if you don't get a straight shot at it, it just makes it worse. But
See when it went.
So after that, we went back up for the next round. Luckily, we got the left-hand lane yet again, and we were paired up with a little Fox body Mustang known as the Nerd. It's the original Nerd from Oklahoma, I believe, or might have been Kansas, Missouri. I'm not sure. Kansas City, Missouri. But the car is definitely fast. Like I said, it was pretty much a one-lane racetrack, and we did the best we could to make sure that the Falcon could 60 foot as fast as possible. We felt there was still some 60 foot left in it after the round prior beside that white Mustang. So the kids put a little bit more in it in the 60, a little bit more in the 330, and turned it down a little bit out the back just to make sure that Tommy could get to the finish line without having to lift or turn the car sideways. When the car left the starting line, I knew for a fact that we had hit this one out of the park. It was the fastest, straightest, cleanest pass the Falcon had made all day, and likely one of the fastest passes of the entire event. At this point, we're all really, really excited. Tommy's extremely happy with the car. Billy's extremely happy with the car. We're sitting in the catbird seat going into 3 cars for $17,000. And then all hell breaks loose. So after Tommy made that pass, he felt like the car was driving funny on the way back to the pits. When he got back to the trailer, he opened the door and looked back, and he received what I consider basically a death sentence as far as the race is concerned. We're down to 3 cars for $17,000, and Tommy just finds out he's got a flat tire. He's got a cut inner tube on the left rear tire, and that's basically a death sentence for him on that car, because that car is an absolute nightmare to take tires off of. The wheel wells are tiny. You have to disconnect both shocks, the anti-roll bar. It is a whole process. You got to air the tires down and squish them to get them out of the tire or out of the wheel well. And Tommy was pretty upset. I witnessed Tommy for the first time in a long time just kind of break down. He had been driving the car way beyond what he should have. You know, he's trying to win that $17,000, and $17,000 is a lot to Tommy. He's a young man, you know, he doesn't make a whole lot of money. He has to count every penny. So, you know, he's looking at this as a big payday if he can make this happen. Now, Billy's original plan was to pull the wheel and tire off and just put a valve stem in the wheel and try and run that side without a tube, but not a good idea. And then he was going to consider pulling the wheel and tire off the S10 and taking a tube out of it and put it in the Falcon, which we found we had a tube in the trailer. But the problem was we were down to 3 cars, we were against curfew, and there was no time to put an inner tube in. And Billy asked me to go search in the pits for a 15 by 10 inch wheel with a 6.5 inch backspace. It's a pretty common wheel on a Fox body Mustang. And so I went in search of that. And at that time, we were down to just the scooter, and Tommy was actually on the scooter. The golf cart had a flat tire. The generator quit running. It had water or something contaminated the fuel. So we were without power there for a little bit. I'm trying to scramble and find a wheel and tire, and I'm trying to hook up our spare generator to keep the lights on so the kids can work on the car. And I made the comment to Vicky as I walked past her in the trailer, I said, pray for rain, because I felt it starting to sprinkle just a tiny little bit. There was just a little sprinkle, and it had done that earlier in the night. But I felt this little sprinkle, and as I walked past Vicky, I said, pray for rain. And she texted her mom back home and told her to pray for rain. And within seconds, I mean literally within seconds after we had that conversation, it just downpoured. As I was going through the pits, I ran into Robert Smith with Pennywise Racing, who said he knew somebody that might have some wheels. And this young man took the wheels off his car in the pits to give to us, just in case we could make the round call. And I told him I'd never forget it. So that pretty well ended our night. We were very fortunate to walk out of there with anything, in all honesty. Had it not rained, I think we still could have made the round call. It would not have been good. It would have been a Hail Mary at best. The guy that put the race on is a very nice person. He absolutely has the best intentions. And I like the guy very much, but he has a lot to learn about putting on races. It's not all fun and good times and making lots of money. It's not like that. It's just not. We used to put races on. We used to host races, and I know exactly what it's like to be in his position. I know exactly what it's like to have to put your foot down and tell somebody they can go somewhere else. The main thing is we all got to come home safe in one piece, and we can fix the race cars and we can go race another day, and maybe we can all as a family make better choices about where we race, who we race with, and what the circumstances are before we pull out the driveway. Good night, everybody.